My name is Carla, for those who are watching this or listening to this, but my name is Carla Anderson, and I am 37 years old. And I am a mom of a 15-year-old and a stepmom of three beautiful, handsome boys. And I'm a fashion blogger, and I have ADHD.
I'm hoping you can take me back to before you were diagnosed and what started pushing you towards asking the questions that then led to you seeking out an assessment for ADHD.
Sure. So it all started at my last job. I'm not going to name the name of the company. Nothing against them. It's just to keep their privacy. But it all started then. And I think throughout the years I've noticed some things, but I never really took it serious. It was more so in this last job that I absolutely hated. Um, and not necessarily the company, not the industry, not the boss, the colleagues. It was what I was doing. And it's because my symptoms became really prominent and made it very hard for me to do my job and enjoy my job. Because as you know, as an ADHDer, you have to feel successful at what you do and you have to be very passionate about what you do. And I just did not. I did not feel the passion. And it was mainly because I was not feeling successful because it was so hard to do every task. Every task that I've done before, very similar tasks, they became really hard. And I asked myself, why is this so hard to do? I used to do it before. It's always been harder for me. I've always been that person that had to study longer, had to study harder, had to pay attention more when people would talk or in class. So even though I had always good grades in school, a great student, it was always hard. And I never really understood that. So that was really prominent in my life, but I never really took the time to really dig deep until this job. And that's when I started Googling my symptoms, like hyperactivity, like lack of concentration, my executive skill functions. I was lacking. I was having so much trouble with it. And then most important, one of the most important parts was also my relationships with, as you know, I've been with Chad for 8 years, and he kept telling me, you have ADHD. And for the longest time, I thought, you're being mean. And I love Chad, and he knows that. He's the love of my life. But I never really took it serious. So now I'm incredibly thankful to him. So I know he's going to be listening to this. So thank you, Chad. Um, but yeah, just so bravo to Google. And then Google, I went into, to my doctor. Well, and that's another journey, right? It's finding the right person to do this diagnosis.
Can we go back to your childhood? You mentioned being good in school, getting good grades.
Yeah.
What have you been able to connect now that you have an ADHD diagnosis and some of the things that maybe were going on as a kid that you didn't know and how that has affected you now as an adult?
I think, you don't know what you don't know, I guess, when it comes to my parents. And growing up in Bolivia, it was just not a thing. And so, I mean, my parents never even, it didn't occur to them because it's not a thing. You don't know what you don't know. But as a child, I remember studying for so long. Like, I remember I would miss gatherings, parties, sleepovers, just different types of activities because I needed to study. And I needed longer time than an average person. And yes, I had great grades, but that was the result of countless of hours reading, rereading, and rereading again, taking notes, highlighting, and just creating all these strategies, to help me succeed. And I did not know what was wrong. I didn't even know there was something wrong with me. I just figured that's just how my brain is wired. So I think it affects me as an adult, the fact that in some areas I've acquired strategies, but in some areas I did not. And I think relationships wise is a good example. Um, some things that I do work wise, like time management, is incredibly hard for me. I can be at places on time, but just like different tasks are really hard. And I just wish that if I would have known as a little kid that I have ADHD, I would have gone through therapy and coaching, and I would have acquired a set of skills to help me navigate life as an adult way easier, way better.
Absolutely. And I think that too. At least I hope. I hope that if I had known,
Yeah.
I would have been able to learn certain things to make adulthood easier.
Yeah.
You mentioned finding the right person to go down the assessment path with. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that you found as you were trying to find help. You know, you went on Google, Google gave you a diagnosis, but that's not the end. You still have to kind of actually speak to somebody who has a medical degree. You can't just like end it at Google. What was that process like for you?
Um, it was lengthy. It was frustrating. Um, First of all, there's not a lot of availability. As far as there's many doctors, many psychologists, there's many psychiatrists, there's many coaches, but they're booked. So if anything, anybody that's considering this career, please do so. We need more. Um, but it was just call after call, waiting list. Um, and really, sometimes, and whenever I would talk to someone, for example, I just did not, even like from a phone call, I did not feel the connection. Sure, they were available, but I just did not feel connected. And that's something, as you know, as an ADHD, or you feel deeply. You have a high emotional intelligence, so you can pick up on, I don't know, call me new agey, but vibrations, right? And whenever I would meet people or speak with people over the phone, I just did not feel that connection. And for me, that's so important, and to connect with people before I open up on such a personal matter. Um, so it was lengthy, frustrating, but I finally got to the right person, and that was, I did not know the order, first of all, of, do you contact a psychiatrist? Do you contact a psychologist? So I started with with a psychiatrist, and Dr. Cohen, and she's phenomenal. And she said, "Well, I can't give you any medication without you having a diagnosis." I'm like, "Oh, okay, so I have to do that. Okay, fine, great, no problem." So went through my own list, and then I called her and I said, "Do you happen to know anybody?" And she told me. She referred me to Dr. Stephen Cosberg, and I actually have therapy tomorrow. But last week I asked him if it would be okay for me to mention his name, and he said yes, of course. So that's why I'm mentioning it. I just feel like whoever's listening, whoever's watching, I just think that the more candid, the more honest I am, the better, because I want people to know that there's help out there, and there's really good psychologists out there, and good coaches and psychiatrists as well. So, yeah, I reached out to Dr. Cosberg, and then he highly suggested my coach, Jill Cosberg, Dr. Jill Cosberg, and she is phenomenal. So I have weekly therapy and weekly coaching twice a week, and therapy once a week. And then I have my psychiatrist, of course, because I'm going to be starting Adderall, and I'm sure that's probably your next question. But yeah, I got to have the team.
I appreciate that you actually mentioned the people that you're working with, because I've heard from so many people that they find themselves in an appointment where their provider is not actually listening. They've already decided, nope, there's no way you have ADHD. And so I think it actually is so important to be like boosting up the people who understand how complex ADHD is and who don't just dismiss somebody, especially a woman who walks in, because I
Yeah.
think so many of us are just exhausted. I'm exhausted from advocating for myself. And I think the more conversations we have about what makes a good provider for people with ADHD, it's a great path forward. So you mentioned heading down this path with medication. What led you to make that decision?
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm 37. I was diagnosed early this year, 2022. And based on the research that I've done, there's been studies that says that your symptoms of ADHD become better when you do cognitive therapy and coaching, and mainly cognitive therapy. And so I wanted to try that. Being new, I didn't want to just jump to the medication wagon, if you will. Not that I don't believe in it. I discovered in my life that I am better doing things baby steps than just jumping full force. As you know, we're so good at that, right? Just impulsivity and just full force without even thinking consequences. But so I'm like, nope, this time I'm going to be responsible, a responsible adult, and I am going to just do therapy. So I did that. So again, diagnosed in January this year, and I've been doing it now for 9 months. 2 months we can't count because my sister passed away, so I was, you know, out of order for a couple of
Which is
months.
very much to be understood. And I'm
Mhm.
so sorry to hear that.
Thank you so much. So, anyways, I've been doing it now for 7 months, and I've realized that I need to be on medication. I think I still can use I'm hoping that Adderall, and this is where I'll start with Adderall. I mean, as you know, there's other ones, but this is gonna be my tryout, and I hope that is the one that works out for me. I just feel that therapy has helped wonders. I do it weekly, once a week, and then I do coaching a couple times a week. And in addition to that, I will do Adderall. And I'm hoping that Adderall will help me with my concentration and just to get things done because I struggle with getting things done. And I have them. It's like I'm not. I'm a motivated person, but as you know, we become so emotional, and this little task in our mind can be so big. And I'm just hoping that Adderall, from what I hear, can just really help you just focus and just get those things done. So, crossing my fingers. So, I'll be starting that soon.
You can pull out your notes if you want, because I
Yeah.
know that you wrote stuff down, which I so appreciate,
Yeah.
because I definitely feel like I get into the moment and I have things that I want to say and
Yeah.
I totally forget about it. But I would love to ask about the coaching, because I went the opposite route. I was very impulsive and I went right for the medicine
Sure.
and then found a therapist. And I go, once a week, and there's a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy that's happening, but there's also to-do lists and
Yeah.
accountability and all of that. So I'm curious what you're working on in coaching and how you see yourself changing from it.
Yeah. So, just let's back up. I'm going to back up a little bit
Of course.
just so to add more context. So, as I mentioned, this year, I was diagnosed, and going through coaching and therapy is a journey. You're just getting to know that person that you are about to open up yourself with. So there is that process first of getting to know your therapist, getting to know your coach, and truly trying to get to know what you want to talk about, the areas that you want to focus. And to me, it's like reinventing myself, getting to know myself. This is like I think of Carla in January of where are the areas that I need to work on? And then I had to think about all the areas that I was struggling in my job, just kind of using that as a template. And um, so it's a process, Lindsay. It really is. It's not something that out of like one coaching session, you're like, this is it. This is what I want to work on. So I can tell you honestly that as of recently, I think I'm finding the exact area where I need the most help right now. So with coaching is basically you are going through your executive function skills. So it's not as easy for me to to do time management in a way that for the average person, for the neurotypical person, does. And um, it's just time management. I wrote it down, obviously, task initiation. That, as you know, we are very emotional people. So it's really, really hard for me sometimes to start a task because I think that task is so big and overwhelming. And then I'm feeling frustrated and I'm like, how am I going to do this? And then when I finish the task, it's like, oh my God, I could have finished this 5 years ago. Just kidding. But, just silly.
Sometimes feels that long.
Yeah, it does. Planning and time management, that is the main area that I'm focusing right now. It's as easy as buying a planner and writing things down. And as I mentioned to you during the break, that I think in images. Everything, when people talk to me, when I think of my day, my outfits, my day with my son, things that I need to do with Chad, I visualize everything. So the phone was just not cutting it. Putting things on the calendar was just not cutting it. I needed to see the things that I need to do. And I was actually going to bring my planner, but I don't know. I just didn't want to be corny, I guess, and just here it is, but it's just at a glance. Got it on Amazon. It's $15, and I open it and I can see my entire week, what it looks like, and it's broken down and by quarters of the hour, and I have everything that I need to do, and I literally sat with my coach and planned this out. And of course, I'm not going to need my coach for weeks to come, but I needed to lay the foundation with her because I needed to bounce off ideas with her as far as like, how can I execute my tasks in a more successful way? How can I use a planner? Because I don't know, I'm sure this happens to you, but I get so overwhelmed whenever I see a bunch of words or a bunch of numbers. In this case, a planner, like a bunch of days and a bunch of hours. Just like sometimes it's, what's your goal of the day? Or like, put 3 to-dos here that you want to no, 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 no. It's just, I needed to go back to the basics. Just give me a planner that gives me the hours. So I needed to figure out which planner is going to work for me. How do I want to break down my day? And then she helped me through that. And then doing the to-do list. Do I need to have a different piece of paper for my to-do list to check things off? And then I found out that I wanted to have a separate notebook where I can just write things down as they come in my brain. Like I could be driving right now, going back home, and I could think, I need to download pictures from my camera to my computer. And then I write those things down in that notebook. And then my to-do list, which is a Post-it note, it's breaking down by day of the things that I want to do that day. And I have to be realistic with my time. And all of this I've done with her. And it's to a lot of 37-year-olds, they may think I don't know, I what's wrong with me, right? But there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. It just, unfortunately, in my life, my journey, I had to figure it out that I have ADHD at this age. But in hindsight, I think I can proudly say that I've gotten to know Carla way better, and it's something that unfortunately sometimes life is too busy. Not everybody has a chance to really get to know oneself. Like, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you need in order to function better, to be a better person? And I had to take a deep, deep, deep dive with coaching of who Carla is and Carla needs and what I need to do to be successful, to feel successful.
If you could pinpoint one thing about ADHD that makes life the hardest for you, is there one thing that stands out?
I think it's the concentration. because if you think about it, it's concentration is in everything that we do. It's the conversation that we're having right now. I need to concentrate in order for me to be able to give you accurate answers and not like go down this rabbit hole, which I can, or long winded answers, right? So I need to concentrate on giving you the right answer. I need to concentrate to listen to you when you're talking to me. I need to concentrate to finish a task. I need to concentrate when other people are talking to me. And just, so concentration is such a big part of our lives that becomes so easy for a lot of people. But for me, it is not. So one of the things that I've been doing, thanks to my coaching, is because I think in images, I started implementing that skill more now in my conversations with people. So whenever people are talking to me, I literally envision things. When it could be an object, it could be the word itself, and it's really interesting to me how that works out. So yeah, I would say concentration is my biggest struggle.
I know that this is a very new thing for you. You mentioned you were just diagnosed earlier in the year. And so I love that you said you're like getting to know Carla.
Yeah.
When you look at ADHD and what you know about it and the way it affects your life, what comes to your mind when you think of positive things?
Well, hyperfocus is definitely an advantage to me. And actually, so many people in my life, especially Chad, can say, man, when you really want something, you know how to get it. And that is so true. And I can hyper focus on the most random things, but it's mainly on the things that I'm very passionate about. So, hyper focus is definitely an advantage. And I use that as a tool and to help me succeed and make me feel successful.
When you look at life and life post diagnosis, where do you see yourself thriving?
I think getting to know myself this is where I'm at. Like, if you look at the journey, there's like different facets, or facets. I don't know how you say that in English. I'm translating from Spanish to English, so hopefully that
You're
makes
doing
sense.
incredible.
Thank you. But I look at it as, again, thinking in images. I look at this like ruler, if you will, and there's like different facets in this, and I am in the face of getting to know myself. And I think that is such an important step that cannot be overlooked, because if you don't learn about yourself, your struggles, your weaknesses, your strengths, it's going to be a really long and frustrating journey. So I think for me, it's learning, what do I need in order to be a better person? And I'll give you an example. I know I need to recharge, and that is taking a break from people. It doesn't mean that I go days without talking to people, but it means silence. It means, and for X amount of time, right? And I mean, it doesn't mean that if Chad is calling me, I'm not going to pick up. No, it doesn't mean that. Or if Michael needs me, I'm going to say, no, I'm recharging. No, I'm not going to do that. But I think like my loved ones, they understand that I do need that time to kind of recharge and regroup. And that's part of getting to know yourself, and that I know I need to do that in order to function better, do a good job, during an interview or whatever it is. And so yeah, I just think that phase is incredibly important to get to know yourself and the areas where you need to work on and the areas that you excel.
You mentioned this a little bit when we were talking about your childhood, but being raised in Bolivia, culturally, you mentioned this wasn't something that anyone talked about.
No, no. And it was not really, it was not a thing, it's kind of like here in the United States. It's so interesting because ADHD, you hear a lot about ADHD, but the interesting part is that you don't really know what it is. And believe me, you just don't hear it, period, right? So, I mean, back then, I'm going to be 38 in November. So, I mean, that's long, long, long time ago. And think about that. Like, science is so much more advanced in America than in the United States than it is in Bolivia. So now in Bolivia, yes, people have heard of ADHD, but back then when I was, you know, growing up, you didn't know. My parents did not know, and there's no way my parents would have not done something if they knew that there was something going on.
Right. I dealt with that with my mom
Yeah.
when I was first diagnosed. She held so much guilt. I was like, what would you have done? You had no idea.
No.
There wasn't like I woke up one day and like my hair was pink or something. There was
Right.
no dead giveaway. And it was
Right.
also so outdated, the stereotype that society was working off of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that we can do. What we can do, though, is create more awareness, especially here, because so many people have it. But yet, when you ask them, oh, you have ADHD, okay, so what do you do? Oh, I just take Adderall, and they don't really know even.
Right.
And it's like, we need to do something about it. And not just for the people that know that they have it. And again, nothing wrong with taking medication at all. But it's more so creating awareness for the people that do have it but don't know they have it.
Right.
And how do you create awareness and make them feel comfortable that it's okay? And I think one thing that it's so important that I mention is the fact that I do not, and maybe, gosh, a doctor is going to be shocked or, I don't know, think that I am incredibly foolish for saying this, but I do not think it's a mental illness. And I've read literature where it says it's a mental illness, and I don't think it's a disorder. I just don't. And to me, the way I look at it is there are different types of brains. And for all I know, there's more. But right now, we have the neurotypical, and then we have the ADHD brain. And when I say symptoms, I don't mean symptoms from an illness. I'm just talking about symptoms because right now that's the only word that we can use
Right.
of how I felt. They're not symptoms from an illness at all. So I just want to make sure that people know that there's nothing wrong with you. You are not dumb. You don't have a disorder or a mental illness. And even if you did, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I just want people to know that it's just simply a different type of brain. And I'm hoping that schools and the workforce will become more aware of it so they can make adjustments in the workspace area for people like us.
I love the way that you put it. And I imagine that there are some doctors out there who would probably say, well, no, it's categorized in the DSM as a mental illness. But I totally see and hear where you're coming from in the sense of somebody who was born and no one knew something was wrong. And it is just the brain we were given. And there are so many of us that have these brains, and they are so different. Like your ADHD brain and my ADHD brain are very different. They share similarities, but it's such a complex, massive thing to understand.
100%. I mean, there's so many advantages to our brain. I mean, hyper focus is just one of them, but that you can use to. I mean, it could be bad, but use it's for your advantage. But I mean, one of the other things that I can think of is like creativity. We're incredibly creative and people in so many different ways. I'm not just talking about the artsy type of people. Like I am definitely artsy, but I'm talking about like thinking outside of the box. That's being creative. And I think we are pros at that. And problem solving skills. We're really good at that. And we are highly emotional intelligent. We can pick up on vibes so quickly, on just people's emotions so quickly. We're empaths. We're charismatic. We care about people. We want to make sure people are good and they feel good. So I mean, there's so many things that are definitely a plus. That we just have to get to know those good things and not just focus on, the bad things, I guess.
Well, Carla, I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and your passion and commitment to raising awareness for ADHD. It truly is such a wonderful addition to the community. And I'm so grateful that you were willing to share it with us on Refocus together.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for having me. It's truly an honor.